and welcome back. Today I'm going to go over the techniques that I use to keep my makeup set and in place absolutely all day. This has kind of been like a trial and error over the last couple of years, especially with my job as a reporter, being kind of out in the field, running around, especially in the hot sun. So I found that these kind of techniques help me, like I said, keep my makeup in place all day and make sure it really looks great throughout the day. So first, you can see I've already done a shadow and liner on my eyes. A new primer that I've just started recently using is the MAC Prep and Prime. It's the natural Radiance base, and I usually stay away from any Radiant primers because sometimes they tend to make my oily skin look even more oily. But I found with these techniques I can actually use a little bit more of a Radiant primer, and it makes my skin look so nice and bright. And also, like I said, using these techniques, it lasts all day. So I'm just going to work this into the skin, across and a little bit down the neck as well. Or you can use whatever, your favorite primer is. If you have particularly oily skin, you might want to use like a shine killer kind of a primer. The NYX Shine Killer, the NYX Angel Veil, the Benefit Pore No More. So there's like lots of different primers out there if you have specifically oily skin, and then obviously any sort of like a radiant primer if you have particularly dry skin. I then set my primer with the Gerard Cosmetics Slay All Day Setting Spray. And it may seem like a little bit silly to be setting your base before you actually have any makeup on it, but actually this really makes sure that the primer really stays in place and that then your makeup can then a little bit more easily adhere to it. So then you can kind of go in with whatever foundation you want. I've recently been using the number 7 Beautifully Matte, usually with just like a pump of the number 7 Stay Perfect foundation, just because that kind of combination I found like looks really nice on the skin and really also lasts all day. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of that on the back of my hand with a little concealer brush here, but again, you can kind of use whatever foundation you prefer. And then I'm just going to dot that across the skin, or however you like to apply your foundation. Here it isn't necessarily as much about the application as it is about the steps that you use. I do recommend, however, using a beauty blender. I do like the flat brush sometimes, the foundation brush. However, the beauty blender really just pushes that product into the skin a little bit more than the brush does. Even the kabuki brush, even though you're kind of buffing it in, it just kind of a little bit more sits on the skin, versus the beauty blender really kind of pushes that in to the skin. Which also gives you obviously a really nice finish. So just working that in. And I said this step is kind of, however you typically apply your foundation and whatever foundation you prefer. But I have to say the number 7 has really become my new favorite recently. I just feel like it looks the nicest. And I feel like my skin looks the most flawless when I wear this compared to some other ones. I do still love my L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte, but I do find now, after wearing this makeup, or this foundation rather, that it just lays a little bit flat on my skin. It doesn't kind of, the skin shine through as much. It doesn't look as natural. Versus this foundation, I feel like definitely does. And you can obviously build up the foundation to whatever level of intensity you want, whether you want more of a sheer, just covering of the skin, or whether you are looking for more of that full coverage. And I'm just using a Real Techniques Miracle Sponge here. This is pretty much my favorite beauty blender at this point, just because, or beauty sponge, just because it has a little bit more give than some of the other beauty blenders. Some of them are just so stiff, and I found that it's harder to work my foundation in. And this one is just a little more, I guess you call squishy. I'm gonna go in with my Tarte Shapetape. As in my last couple of videos, this has become definitely my new favorite concealer as well. This really makes the skin look beautiful and bright and radiant, and really stays in place and does not crease better than I think any concealer. And I've tried quite a bit, especially of the drugstore brands. I haven't tried as many high-end ones. And the closest dupe I have been able to find is the Maybelline Master Conceal. I'm gonna just put a little bit of that also right under my eyes because this is in a lighter shade. I just wanna slightly brighten up a little bit more underneath. I don't find that the coverage and the finish is quite as nice, but if you really need to find an alternative, this would be the closest. But again, the Tarte Shapetape I would recommend is kind of that one splurge product if you can afford it. It's not terribly expensive, but for a lot of us on a budget, we're kind of sticking to the drugstore stuff. So just working that concealer underneath the eye, really right up underneath the lash line. I'm gonna bring it slightly out just to kind of clean up the edge of my eyeshadow as well. And then just moving around the face. Right. Now I know it's been a long time since I've actually sat down and recorded. I know I did that little Facebook Live the other day, but haven't actually gotten to sit down and do a video in quite some time. So I hope everyone has been doing very well. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Hopefully you got to see some friends or family. You know, even if it wasn't on Thanksgiving Day, hopefully you at least got to see some friends and family around Thanksgiving. I know it was definitely really fun to head home for me to Jersey and kind of see some people. I'm also going to clean up just right on the inside, along the inside of my nose here. And once everything is blended out and kind of built up to your liking, my recommendation now, compared to all the other setting powders that I would have tried before, would be the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder. I feel like other setting powders definitely can sometimes hold your makeup in place, but this one will make it look airbrushed, make it look perfect. So, you know, even if you maybe don't have as full of a coverage underneath your eye, this will kind of give you a little bit of an extra oomph to really make it look perfect, airbrushed, and concealed completely. So I like to, again, just like I said, make sure all the creases from under your eye are blended out and everything is all blended in. And then take a little bit of this in the lid. I have the shade 10 Fair Light, but they're basically translucent, all the shades. And I believe they sell also a specifically translucent powder. I put a pretty generous amount in the lid. And then I take that same beauty blender that's still kind of damp from the product that I just used, and I dip it straight into the powder, and I go straight first underneath my eyes, as if you're going to bake, but then just basically work that product right in underneath the eyes, and just kind of pushing that in. And if you need a little bit more, and you can always obviously build up, so if you want to take a little bit less the first time and then go back over it as you need. And I just find that this really, really, really holds your makeup. I've tried it with several different brushes, but if you go right in with that beauty blender, like I said, it's still a little bit damp from your from the product that's on it. Go right under the eyes. This is really, really, really going to hold your under eye concealer in place, and this even helps enhance if you have maybe not as good of an under eye concealer, but you really need it to last, and that's all you have. This will kind of help that. I mean, you can use any loose setting powder. I've just found that this one for me lasts the longest. I'm also going to go over the other places that I highlighted or concealed, so kind of in the center of the face, and if I have a little bit extra left, kind of go across the skin as well. Obviously, you want to concentrate the most of the product on the areas that you highlighted, and then again, whatever you just have left on your sponge, kind of take across the skin. It's kind of in the center of the face where we concealed. And just working that in, just kind of tapping across the skin. So I am going to go in just quickly with a little bit of contour. I have the Sephora Palette Contour Kit. I'm trying to see if there's like a specific shade with this one. I want to say it's probably like the medium shade. I think there's 3 different palettes that they carry at most Sephora's. I'm going to just take this center contour color here on a Luxie 660 Precision Foundation brush and just contour where I normally do cheekbones, along my forehead, center of the nose, a little bit on the jawline. And again, I find that after this, the products just set so much nicer on the skin. And if you really want to take your, any sort of setting spray over the skin again, after you've contoured or even before, just to really set all that in place again, you can definitely go for it. I feel like you don't really necessarily need it. And I'm just going to take a smaller, I think this is even an eyeshadow brush. It's a Lotte London brush. It's just kind of has like a narrow, flatter edge. And I'm just going to tap a little bit into the contour, tap off the excess, and just use that to contour my nose. And then you can take a larger, fluffier brush to kind of blend that away. All right, then I'm going to take a little bit of blush. I have the CoverGirl Cheekers in the color, it just says blush, it doesn't have a shade, let's see. Number 148. It's just basically like kind of the pinkiest generic pink you can find. And just dusting that on the cheeks with a Sephora angled blush brush. Alrighty, and for highlighter, I'm going to use the Wet n Wild MegaGlow Highlighting Powder in the color Precious Petals. It's 321B. I'm just going to take a fluffy big eyeshadow brush and just dust that along the tops of the cheekbones, a little bit above the temple. Same on the other side. A little bit down the center of the nose. Cupid's bow. And then I'm just going to take a little bit on a Sigma E30 pencil brush to highlight the center inner corner of the eyes. Alrighty, then I'm going to do the rest of my eye makeup as far as lashes and brows, and I will be right back. Okay, so I am back and we have just one final step left. I'm going to take a little bit of the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Pores Pressed Powder here, or any sort of like a finishing powder, so that would not be a setting powder, though you can, if you don't have one, that'd be like the HD Makeup Forever pressed powder, any sort of either like the white, a little bit yellowy, or translucent setting powder. So just gonna dust that across the skin, and I like to kind of start in the center of the face, maybe take a little bit more through my T-zone. And this also just really makes sure all your makeup's really blended together here. So once you just dust a little bit of that across the skin, you're gonna take either the same setting powder or a different one and spread that across the skin. And that is it. You are ready to go. Your makeup will last, I promise you, much longer than it is currently. If you add these steps into your routine, then it will really make your skin look really airbrushed and beautiful. So I hope that these tips were helpful, and I hope you have a great week. Please like and subscribe.